Hey guys, it's Sully again with part 3. I'm going to give a trigger warning and a cheers to this episode. Okay, we're going to get into some more true crime in this one, so let's go. All right, so as we walk down Ursuline Street and on to Royal Street in the French Quarter, which is Ursuline Street is considered the most haunted block in New Orleans, and that's what the nuns are named after. So that's just a little ironic in my book. But at any rate, I'm going to talk about 2 homicides here. And the first one is Richard Moidy. And they live in this unassuming house in the French Quarter. And again, you can go look at pictures that I'll post of our tour. So this is Richard Moidy. And this was a crime of passion. So he and his brother's family, 9 of them, cohabitated in this 1,000 square foot flat. They only lived on the 2nd floor of this building. And it was not furnished, and both brothers were upset at their wives for not providing for their children. So one night, after arguing with his wife, because she insinuated that she could probably make the best money by doing sex work, he flew into a rage. And so he walks the, 30 feet down to the bar, and Moidy was really not a drinker. And so at this time it was prohibition, and he goes in and he gets a hold of some whiskey, and he goes to the bottom of the bottle. And at this time, he's yelling to other patrons in the bar and at the bartender about like his shitty living conditions, which I feel like it's his fault. So I guess in this drunken rage, he decides he's going to go home and murder his wife. Now, homeboy, his brother, had already left, and he left his children and his wife with his brother-in-law and with her brother and sister-in-law. And so he gets back, and they're packing their trunks because the next day they're going to move out and go open their own business and do sex work and make some money. Okay? Well, this throws Moidy even into a huger rage. And he decides, it's believed that the women were struck with a blunt force object, and that he chopped up the bodies and stuffed them into trunks that they had packed to leave with the next morning. And he's quoted as saying, "They fit nicely." Okay? He would later tell a reporter that they fit nicely. Okay? So Teresa, who is Moidy's wife, so he does kill actually his wife and his sister-in-law. And his wife, Teresa, when the trunk was opened by investigators, her ring had been shoved into a gash in her back that was at the top of the trunk. And so I don't know if that was a message from Moidy, but at any rate, Henry Moidy scooped up his kids, hailed a cab, and dropped them off at his sister's house without a word about what had happened, and fled into the swamps of Louisiana. However, he was later captured, and he was prosecuted for his crimes. So I got some of that off of CrimeWire, and I'll do my references at the end. So the second crime that happens on Ursuline Street, which is considered the most haunted block in New Orleans. So a German by the name of Mueller and his wife, who I can't find her name, she's unnamed, had moved into the neighborhood and had opened a successful sausage factory. And like I said, they were extremely successful, but his wife, they'd been together for a while. She had kind of maybe aged past her prime. And so he started having an affair with a woman that helped them around their home and the factory. And, I had a joke that she helped with the sausage business, literally. Okay? So, one night while wife Mueller, she's sweeping up the sausage factory. And again, it's believed that she was struck with a blunt force object and succumbed to that wound, or did not. But at any rate, she was fed through the sausage machine. And It is rumored that the crime was discovered when a patron bit into a sausage and her wedding ring was found. What the fuck? Okay. So, anyways, those are the two murders on Ursuline. So as we make our way to Royal Street, which is just a quick jaunt, at the end of this block is a 3-story gray building with, again, this gorgeous black ironwork, flowers spilling out of gorgeous pots. This building looks beautiful. It actually stands out in the French Quarter. Well, this is the place where one of the most horrific stories comes out of the French Quarter. So let's go back again to the late 1700s. A woman by the name of Madame Delphine Lalaurie. She was born in the early 1700s, and when she was young, during the Haitian Uprising, which back in part 2, I think, that is where Marie Lavelle had met her husband at the time. But Delphine was just a small child, and we believe that this gave her motive for some of her future crimes. So she saw her family members being murdered by black men during the Haitian Uprising. At any rate, she was married and widowed twice, so she could get married again because your husbands have to die, I guess, to get married. And her third marriage, she bought the Lalaurie mansion that still stands on Royal Street in the early 1830s, and it was actually built specifically for her. It's a gorgeous home, but also some of the most terrible crimes against humanity would occur in her slave quarters. So although police and a lawyer had been to the mansion to remind the Lalauries the laws on slave treatment, at the time, they ended the visit saying that, like, her slaves seem well fed and happy. I don't know. But at any rate, they didn't really see a problem until one morning a fire broke out in the quarter. And when fire relief and investigators entered the property, a black woman was chained to the stove. Now, it's believed she committed suicide because her nor any other slaves in the Lalaurie mansion knew that they would never get out alive. And they would probably end up being tortured to death. So let's get into that. So, quote unquote, 7 slaves, more or less horribly mutilated, suspended by the neck with their limbs apparently stretched and torn from one extremity to the other, is what a bystander reported. A version of this story circulating in 1836, recounted by Martineau, which I believe was like a journalist or a police investigator at the time. He added that the slaves were emaciated. They showed signs of being flayed or cut open with a whip. They were bound in restrictive postures and wore spiked iron collars, which kept their heads in a static position. And when townspeople heard of these atrocities, a mob actually burned the mansion down, saying that they had found whips and collars on the property. And the slaves at first were imprisoned for their own safety until they figured out what to do. And 4,000 people came to see the suffering of the surviving slaves from the property. These visitors had come from all over to see with their own eyes the suffering that these people had been through. So they were not forgotten. Also, bodies of children were dug up on the property. It's not known if they died from disease or at the hands of Madame Lalaurie. But she fled by small boat to Alabama, and then it's believed that she perished in her 60s in France. Some of the stuff in American Horror Story has not been verified, like the bullhead and her painting her face with blood, but at any rate, there is some truth to the story of American Horror Story Coven. So that is it. That is the end of my tour. I hope you guys thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm going to post pictures on my TikTok with some of the places that we went. I also host a true crime podcast called Kitchen Table Research. Our bio is Our link is in the bio, and you can find Kitchen Table Research at Facebook, Instagram, or anywhere else. My references are the Tor Real Witchcraft, Voodoo,